Hello, this is Nick Mills and you are listening to City Radio. I am joined by a very special guest. He is the award-winning co-creator of The Office and Extras, also featuring on the most downloaded podcast of all time, The Ricky Gervais Show. He is touring the UK for the very first time with his new stand-up comedy tour, Hello Ladies, and I am very pleased to say that I am joined by Mr. Stephen Merchant himself. How are you, Steve?
I'm very well, thanks. Thanks for having me.
And also, thank you very much for talking to us. It's much appreciated.
Not at all.
Okay, now you started touring earlier this month. You've already played several venues in London, Sheffield, and I think you're doing Liverpool, amongst others. All of which, apparently, is to find a wife. How have you fared so far with that?
Well, I initially was jokingly saying it was about finding a wife, and then I started getting some quite odd letters through the post. And then I started seeing a couple of kind of oddball women in the audience. And I'm worried that if I maintain the idea that I'm finding a wife, I'm going to have some kind of crazy woman sat in the front row with a bridal gown and a bread knife in a bag saying, you know, marry me or I'll cut you. So I'm not so much finding a wife. It's more a discussion on my failure to find a wife this far in my life. Much of my life revolves around the search for a mate. It's very Darwinian. And so that's what the show's, is an excuse for me to talk about kind of ill-fated romances, dating disasters, and a number of other things as well that aren't sort of related to that.
I mean, who is your perfect woman?
The perfect woman is difficult to describe, isn't it? But as I've said before, ideally the brain of Stephen Fry and the body of Kelly Brook.
Very nice.
I've not priced myself out of the market there at all.
No. I mean, because every guy always has a type, a blonde, brunette. He's just pretty open to that.
Yeah, pretty open, just as long as it's not the body of Stephen Fry and the mind of Kelly Brook.
You don't ever worry about gold diggers, do you know? Because you might get women that, like want to associate with you because, Ricky and people like that. You got to worry about that.
Beggars can't be choosers.
No, sure.
I doesn't concern me if she's a gold digger. As long as I can have a half-decent conversation over a bowl of shreddies, I'm happy.
But, also now, I mean, was it Paul McCartney's ex-wife? If you ever marry a woman and then she takes you for your money, you've got to worry about these things too. Yeah,
sorry, all I was thinking was I wonder if she's available. she's loaded herself.
Not got that far yet, no.
She's not, well, yeah, but Heather's loaded, isn't she? So she's not going to need any cash. So I'm presuming she's available.
No, okay.
Give her a call. Good idea. Whatever.
No, give her a call. You're also, I think, there's a DVD coming out from this tour. I think one of your dates is being filmed. When is that looking to be released then?
I think that's early November.
Oh, brilliant.
November 13 or 14, something like that.
Just in time for Christmas then.
You've seen through the plan brilliantly there.
No, I mean, how has the tour gone so far then? Have you had fun with it?
It's gone surprisingly well, actually. In fact, I'm always amazed when people come to see me, and if I speak to them afterwards, they're like, oh, you're better than I thought you'd be, which is quite damning with faint praise. But I think it's because people don't know me as a stand-up comic, so I think they're not necessarily sure what to expect. And I hope that I've sort of met the expectations or defied them or whatever. But generally, people seem to be very positive. And it's probably because they don't know that I did stand up years ago. I did it for sort of 5 or 6 years on and off from the late 90s. So I've got the years of sort of being on the road and treading the boards and all that. I have done that. So it's not like I'm coming to it completely fresh and naive, So I've been enjoying. Well, I say enjoying it. I mean, it's a bit like Groundhog Day. Every day you sort of wake up and then you do this sort of show again in the evening, and then you get in a car and go to a new town. It's quite an odd experience.
Are there cities that you like to go to and do stand-up in as opposed to others? Are there some that you don't like, or are there some that you do like?
Well, it's difficult to compare with when I did it originally because I wasn't known then, and I was playing sort of smaller, tiny clubs here and there. Now, this is my first experience of sort of going to theatres, and people have come out to see me specially. So far, I've enjoyed most places really. The audiences have been really nice. I mean, what's the sort of odd is sort of sitting backstage and the anxiety rises over the kind of couple of hours before the show, and most dressing rooms in most theatres around the country are horrible. This is something else I've discovered. They all look like young offenders institutes. It's certainly not a glamorous affair.
How did you actually come about then when did you decide to do the stand-up tour? Was it something you'd always wanted to do? Is it just something that you didn't have a lot of other things to do?
Well, as I say, I did it originally, stand-up, and then I gave it up, basically, once the office took off. I just found it was too much hard work and too much stress and something to concern myself with. So I basically knocked it on the head, and I didn't really miss it at all. And then a couple of years ago, I was like, part of me was sort of, I don't know, I used to be quite good at stand-up, and I never really did it to the best of my ability, and maybe I should sort of give it another go. And so I started dabbling just in in the rooms above pubs in some places in London, and then I just sort of got the bug again. And it's not like I like the cheer of the crowd or that. There's just something very interesting about doing stand-up. It's like a giant jigsaw puzzle, you're constantly sort of you're sat at home thinking, where did that piece go? Why didn't that work? And so you're drawn back to it again and again, just to sort of try and refine it and get it better. And it became like a hobby for me. And then somewhere along the line, I had this like hour-long show or whatever. I was like, well, this would be kind of crazy to just sort of put this on the shelf. So why not take it out on the road?
You're coming here to Glasgow on Friday the 7th of October and Edinburgh on the 13th. Have you visited Glasgow before doing stand-up, and is this a new experience for you?
Glasgow will be new for me. Edinburgh I have done. I did play the Edinburgh Festival a long time ago, actually. It was a four-hander. It was Jimmy Carr, Robin Ince, Ricky Gervais, and me. We did a show in Edinburgh together, four of us, doing stand-up. Well, that's the last time I performed there. But I've never performed in Glasgow. I mean, I know Glasgow always used to have a reputation for being a tough city to play in, but from the comedians I've spoken to, they all love playing Glasgow.
Do you find Scottish audiences then different compared with English audiences? Do you have to use maybe different material, or do you feel that basically all the audiences are the same and they'll find it funny just as...
I haven't noticed a difference particularly, no. My show is not particularly about, Englishness or about London or anything like that. It shouldn't be exclusive, I don't think. And but I haven't played in Scotland for a long time, so this will be the litmus test, really.
You also have several dates in Manchester and London. I think they're in a row, aren't they? So you do about 5 dates in Manchester, and I think you have a break, and then you have 5 dates in London. How do you cope with that type of tour schedule? That must be quite insane.
Yeah, I don't cope at all well, really. A lot of drinking.
Yeah.
A lot of drug abuse. Obviously.
As you do.
Well, it's interesting. You say about how am I coping, but in a way, I'm discovering how I cope on this tour because I've never done it before. So I'm sort of finding out as I go, really. I've tried to be quite disciplined. I'm sure in the old days it was more rock and roll, drink and drugs. Unfortunately, I am. I'm having salads when I'm trying to do a bit of exercise in the hotels. I'm trying to be really kind of sensible. But I do feel a bit like the people who've organised this tour are sort of exploiting me. Basically, they keep adding dates, and I wouldn't be at all surprised if I sort of end up like Fat Elvis in the 70s. Bloated, dying on the toilet.
Won't be hitting the nightclubs then.
I won't probably be hitting the nightclubs, but as I talk about in the show, I'm a bit old to be going in nightclubs.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I just remember on one of your old XFM shows, you used to say how you used to go to a lot of nightclubs. I think I was told by a friend of mine that that's a good way to pick women up, but I've not had no success with it so far. It's not.
Well, one of the problems I have with nightclubs, among many problems, is that I'm 6'7", and the speakers tend to be positioned almost at that height, which means I just have the music blaring directly into my ears, and I can't hear a word anyone's saying. So I've got to crouch or bend or sort of lean to try and be on a level with other people, and then that just starts looking weird. It's the whole nightclub experience is not fun for me. I don't enjoy it.
Nah, just stop doing that then, have you?
Yeah, I pretty much stopped that.
You've got one date in New York. Are you nervous about that? That's a pretty big one. The very end of the tour, and you got New York.
Well, the thing is, you were saying about whether I change the act for Scotland. I certainly will have to change the act for America in part. References like Blue Peter probably won't go down terribly well. So I'm a little bit anxious just in terms of the spheres of reference and what they get and what they don't get. And there's always unusual sort of phrases and things that Americans sort of haven't heard of, which is always weird. But my experience with America is that, they accepted The Office. They took that to their hearts. So I'm hoping that I'm talking about enough universal subjects that they'll be able to get with it.
I mean, a lot of British comedians have gone over there as well, and they've been very successful. I mean, I think a couple of them are very hit and miss. And Russell Brand did very well over there, so I think that it's becoming better now for British comedians to go over there, because I think a lot of American audiences are starting to get British humour.
Well, I think also New York's a very sophisticated city, so I think the people that come hopefully to the show will be quite, will be sort of Anglophiles. Hopefully. Fingers crossed.
I have to ask you about An Idiot Abroad too. We've just seen the first 2 episodes on Sky. How did you ever convince Carl to do another series? Because he moaned so much about not doing another one.
Well, we were a little bit duplicitous, because we told him that this time he could choose from the list of things to do before you die, the bucket list, which is supposed to be fun, exciting things that people have chosen to do as a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity. So, he got to choose, and he chose things he did want to do, like, he wanted to swim with dolphins. We just didn't tell him that when he got there it would be sharks. He got to choose whale watching, but again, he thought it was going to be a luxury cruise liner. He didn't realise it would be a working fisherman's trawler boat where he'd be chopping live bait and getting really sick. So, so we lured him in with the promise of fun stuff, and then obviously put the knife in once he got out there.
How do you feel the second series has worked compared to the first? I think it's absolutely amazing. Some of it, for me, like when he goes back to China, I just think it's great, because he moans so much about hating China, and he's going back and he visits the dwarf village. Do you think it's worked better than the first series? I
think it does work better in some regards, because I think he's changed a bit. I mean, he is a bit more worldly now, and also in this series he's a bit more belligerent. Like at times he'll fight back, or he'll try and outwit Ricky and I, or he'll do something defiantly. He'll say like, "Oh well, they think I'm not going to do it, so I will do it," which just makes it doubly funny. But also, there's some amazing highlights in this series. He does a trip across Route 66 in America, and we make him stop off in a high school to take part in one of those glee clubs.
Yeah.
And Carl has to perform
no.
Van Halen's Jump in front of us.
I heard about
amazing.
this. Wasn't there a big controversy about that actually Van Halen didn't like that?
Oh, well, I think it's more to do with you have to get permission to use people's music on a TV show, and I think probably it's quite complicated getting permission from Van Halen, because I think they all hate each other. So, but you'll certainly see it on Sky, and he absolutely hates it. It's so extraordinary.
Do you think there'll be another series then? Despite Carl's moaning to the contrary, I know he doesn't really do a lot either. Do you think you'll get him back for a third series if you do one?
Well, we were talking to him yesterday, and he was saying he absolutely won't do any more. But then, as he also said in the same conversation, he constantly changes his own mind. So who knows? As he says, he was in a show called Idiot Abroad, so there's not a lot of other work offers coming in.
No, sure.
So I don't know. Never say never.
Also, the big series that took off, you animated for HBO, the Ricky Gervais show. Will there be another series of that?
Yes, there should be another series of that. That's in the works. And also, of course, Ricky and I have done this sitcom, Life's Too Short. That is a new sitcom that we've done with the actor Warwick Davis, who is a short actor. He's 3'6", and he was in Willow and Harry Potter and Return of the Jedi. And so we've done this new sitcom with him, which I think starts in November as well, which is really good.
How did the idea come around for that?
Well, we worked with Warwick at Extras, and he sort of was chatting to us about the idea of a show about a little person, and we kind of, that sounds interesting. And then once we kind of talked more with him, and we realised how amazing he is as a performer, it sort of spiralled from there, really. And the show sort of follows his fortunes a little bit like Extras, almost like Extras mixed with The Office, because it's a fake documentary, but he plays himself, and he encounters me and Ricky, but also he encounters people like Johnny Depp and Liam Neeson and Sting and various other people. So but Warwick is the sort of centerpiece, and he's amazing in it, and he's really funny. Great performance from him. I'm really excited for people to see how good he is.
I mean, a lot of people always make these comparisons to The Office and Extras as well. Do you think it's up there? Do you think that there's another hit potentially?
Well, that's for you to decide. I do think it's very funny. I think there's some really funny stuff in this series, and as I say, I think the thing that really excites me is Warwick. I mean, we've always been excited about working with actors particularly actors that people either don't know or sort of defying people's expectations. You know, I mean, I don't think anyone thought Les Dennis would be as good as he was, or Sean Williamson, or back in The Office, people didn't know who Martin Freeman was, or Mackenzie Crook. And so I think it's one of the things we love is working with actors and sort of getting the best out of them. And I think we've certainly done that with Warwick.
I have to ask you this, just going back to Carl for a second. If you could take 3 top Carl moments, and you can include the podcast, include XFM, what are your main 3?
Wow. Well, I'm still a huge fan of the moment when we had him fake kidnapped in Israel for the last series of Idiot Abroad. Just his reaction was extraordinary, just hearing him talk about the experience of that, and that, I mean, it perhaps was cruel, but it was so funny, and because he was never really in any danger, it just we felt we could do it. So that's a highlight. Let me think. Blimey. I mean, I think probably going back to the early days when we used to be on the radio with him and sort of just discovering the sort of extraordinary way his mind works. I mean, the first time he said just offhand, "Yeah, I knew a bloke who had a horse in the house," and he wants to just play a record, and we're like, "Whoa, we need to talk about this." Horse in the house, still very vivid. And then just those occasional moments of sort of brilliance, like we were talking about the way that people like Callum Best and Bianca Gascoigne are only famous because of who their father was. And Carl said, well, you could say the same about Jesus, which is sort of weirdly profound in its own way. So, there's a lot of Carl highlights. You
guys did a lot of radio shows, and then you started to do podcasts. I know that slowed down. You did a couple, I think, for Comic Relief. Will you go back to doing that, or do you think that's pretty much it now?
I can imagine going back to it. I mean, we're doing some new material for the animation, so in a way that will, that will be like sort of fresh, new podcast material. But that's specifically for the animated series.
How surprised were you at the amount of new fans you seem to have got after your voice acting in Portal 2?
I was very surprised. I was very surprised that people sort of, I don't know, that cared as much, really, I suppose. But yeah, I've had an amazing response to that video game. A whole other kind of group of fans, I guess, or it's strange. I mean, I think I probably underestimated how much people take video games to their heart. I used to play them a lot when I was a bit younger, and I sort of stopped just because it seemed a bit weird sat here on my own in my pants playing video games. But when I had a flatmate, I used to play all the time. But I suppose I'd sort of forgotten how much they get under your skin, and how vivid they are. So so it's quite thrilling there.
I mean, with the stand-up tour you're taking right up to December, do you have anything else that you're working on? Can you juggle other projects?
Well, this has been such a crazy busy year with Life's Too Short and with Carl's show and working on the stand-up, which sort of takes up every waking hour. So I haven't had a chance really to even think about anything else. But what I'm going to try and do is take a holiday. I mean, ideally I'd take the next 10 years off and just get fat and bloated like Elvis.
Now, you can purchase tickets for Stephen's tour, including the Glasgow date, on the Friday 7th of October from various retail outlets, including Ticket Soup and Live Nation. Check out Stephen's official website, www.stephenmerchant.com, for more information. Stephen, thank you so much for doing this interview. I really appreciate it.
Cheers, man. Thanks very much indeed.